Imagine a world where the Titanic, the pride of the White Star Line, never met its tragic fate in the icy waters of the North Atlantic, and instead, embarked on a journey that would forever alter the course of maritime history. But before we begin, keep your eyes peeled for a hidden Easter egg in today's video. Comment down below when you spot it. Now, let's begin. On April 10, 1912, the RMS Titanic, the largest and most luxurious ship of its time, set sail on its maiden voyage from Southampton to New York. Touted as unsinkable, it was a marvel of modern engineering, built with cutting-edge safety features and equipped with opulent accommodations for the wealthy elite as well as hopeful emigrants seeking a new life in America. 4 days into its voyage, disaster struck. On the night of April 14, 1912, the Titanic collided with an iceberg in the North Atlantic and sank, resulting in the deaths of over 1,500 passengers and crew. This tragedy led to sweeping changes in maritime safety and became one of the most enduring stories of human tragedy and hubris. But what if the Titanic didn't sink that night? What if the iceberg was avoided, and the ship made it safely to New York? Let's explore how history might have been drastically different if the Titanic's tragic end had never happened. Imagine the Titanic navigating safely past the iceberg. The ship would have continued on its maiden voyage to New York, greeted by the media frenzy eagerly awaiting its arrival. With its reputation still intact, the Titanic would have been celebrated worldwide as the pinnacle of luxury and engineering. The news of its near miss with an iceberg might have added a layer of intrigue and adventure to the ship's story, making it even more legendary in its success. Passengers, especially those in first class, would have returned home with stories of an extraordinary and lavish voyage. The ship's grandeur, service, and design would have been hailed in the press, solidifying its place as a marvel of the early 20th century. The rise of the White Star Line. Without the catastrophe of the sinking, the White Star Line would have solidified its dominance in transatlantic travel. The Titanic, along with her sister ships Olympic and Britannic, would have continued to represent the height of luxury travel. White Star Line might have gone on to launch even larger and more luxurious ships in an effort to outdo their own successes and maintain a competitive edge over rival Cunard Line. It's likely that Cunard, which was already pushing the boundaries of speed with ships like the Lusitania and Mauretania, would have been forced to innovate even faster to compete. The rivalry between White Star and Cunard could have escalated, leading to a new wave of ever bigger and faster liners, possibly accelerating maritime technology. White Star Line's financial future would have been more secure, and their long-term stability may have been ensured, avoiding their eventual merger with Cunard. Instead of a Cunard-led legacy, the White Star brand could have remained a dominant name well into the 20th century. The delay of safety reforms. One of the most immediate effects of the Titanic disaster was the reform of maritime safety regulations. If the Titanic had safely arrived in New York, the push for safety reforms may not have occurred as quickly. Without the tragedy, the complacency of the early 20th century shipping industry would have continued unchecked. Lifeboat regulations. The Titanic carried lifeboats for only about half of its passengers, which was legally acceptable at the time. If it hadn't sunk, this shortfall in lifeboat capacity might have gone unnoticed for years, leaving future passengers vulnerable. International Ice Patrol. The sinking led to the establishment of the International Ice Patrol, an organization that monitors icebergs in the North Atlantic to prevent similar disasters. Without the Titanic disaster, there may have been no immediate call for such an organization, potentially leading to more ships being at risk from icebergs in the years that followed. Communication technology. Wireless communication was in its infancy during the Titanic's voyage, but the disaster highlighted its life-saving potential. The Titanic's distress calls were heard by other ships, leading to rescue efforts. If the Titanic had survived, the need for universal radio use on ships might not have been so urgent, delaying the widespread adoption of this technology across the shipping industry. Emergency drills and preparedness. The disaster also underscored the importance of regular emergency drills and evacuation procedures. Without the Titanic sinking, ships might not have implemented these practices as rigorously, potentially leading to higher casualties in future accidents. The lives of several notable passengers on board the Titanic would have unfolded quite differently. J. Bruce Ismay, the chairman of the White Star Line, was criticized for surviving the disaster while many others died. If the Titanic had reached New York, Ismay would have been celebrated as a visionary for his role in creating the world's most luxurious ocean liner. His reputation would have remained intact, and he would have likely continued to play a significant role in the maritime industry. John Jacob Astor, one of the world's wealthiest men, died in the sinking. Had he survived, his influence in real estate, technology, and even aviation could have shaped New York's skyline and the city's future. Astor was a forward-thinking businessman, and his continued presence would have likely led to further innovations in both real estate and technology. Benjamin Guggenheim, another wealthy industrialist, also perished on the Titanic. As a key figure in the mining industry, his survival could have had a ripple effect on the global supply of minerals and metals, perhaps even accelerating industrialization. Molly Brown, later known as the unsinkable Molly Brown, would not have earned her heroic reputation without the disaster. While she was already a wealthy philanthropist and activist, she might not have gained the same level of historical prominence if she had merely completed a luxurious voyage rather than saving lives. World War I and the Titanic. When World War I erupted in 1914, many large liners were converted into troop transports. The Titanic, had it survived, would likely have been requisitioned for this purpose by the British government. Its size and capacity would have made it an ideal vessel for transporting soldiers to the front lines. However, large ships like the Titanic were also vulnerable to German U-boats. It's quite possible that, like the Lusitania, the Titanic could have been torpedoed during the war. Had the Titanic been sunk in the conflict, it might have spurred greater international outrage and perhaps intensified anti-German sentiment, possibly even altering the timeline of the United States' entry into the war. Alternatively, had the Titanic survived the war, it could have returned to civilian service, perhaps serving as a symbol of endurance and national pride. Impact on global immigration. The Titanic carried thousands of emigrants, mostly traveling in third class, who were seeking new lives in America. The ship's success would have reinforced the allure of ocean liner travel for emigrants, possibly increasing the number of people making the journey across the Atlantic. The Titanic's long-term presence could have accelerated the pace of immigration to the United States, with larger, safer ships offering more comfortable travel for those fleeing poverty and seeking opportunity. This could have had a lasting impact on the demographics of the United States, influencing the cultural and social fabric of the nation. The economic landscape. Had the Titanic not sunk, the financial futures of many of its wealthiest passengers might have further shaped the global economy. In addition to the individual fortunes of John Jacob Astor and Benjamin Guggenheim, other business magnates on board could have continued their influence in industries ranging from mining to shipping. Furthermore, the Titanic itself represented a major investment for White Star Line and its backers. The ship's success would have encouraged even more investment in the shipping industry, possibly leading to further innovations in luxury travel and maritime technology. This could have even influenced the course of aviation, as ocean liners and aircraft would eventually compete for long-distance travel supremacy in the decades to come. Without the tragedy of the Titanic, the ship would have been remembered primarily for its grandeur and technological marvel. However, it's unlikely that the Titanic would have gained the same cultural significance it holds today. There would be no blockbuster films, no best-selling books, and no ongoing fascination with its story. The human stories of bravery and sacrifice would not exist, and the Titanic might have faded into history as just another ocean liner. In this timeline, it's possible that the sinking of another large ship, perhaps the Lusitania or a future ocean liner, might have become the defining maritime disaster of the 20th century, but the Titanic itself would not hold the same mystique and allure that it does in our timeline. In a world where the Titanic never sank, history would have unfolded very differently. From changes in ship safety, to the course of world wars, to the lives of individuals on board, the ripples of this event would have spread across the globe. While the Titanic would still have been remembered as a grand symbol of its time, its place in history would be far less tragic, and many aspects of modern maritime travel and global events might have been drastically altered. Thank you for joining us on this journey into alternate history. If you enjoyed this exploration of what could have been, then don't forget to like and subscribe and stay tuned for more fascinating what-if scenarios. Make sure to leave your own theories on what else could have changed down below.